other game this entire generation that has brought me as much joy as Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So much so that I just had to make a review video. I just finished playing the story. I still have a lot more to do, but I finished the storyline, and I was just, even on a channel where I don't do game reviews, I was compelled because of how incredibly amazing this game is, and how, for whatever reason, when they first announced the game, I was like, all right. I mean, I wasn't crazy excited. As someone who did grow up with the movies, the first three classics, all right, cool. But for whatever reason, I was like, all right. And even Machine Games, who I know are good, I was like, all right, cool. Then I actually played it because it was on Game Pass. Who knows if I would have even bought it if it wasn't? Now that I have, I would buy it. I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I was actually blown away. It is playing an Indiana Jones movie. It's playing the actual sequel to the first three. This is what this should be. Essentially a spiritual sequel to the first three classics. The last two pieces of shit don't count. Even from the get-go, where they recreated the entire opening of Raiders, I even looked online at videos comparing, and it was like shot for shot. We see that it's a dream, which makes sense. This game is just so good that I'm really taking my time. I was so completely enthralled with how much it is exactly like the way that they managed to get down Harrison Ford's mannerisms as Indy, even the way he smirks a little bit. They absolutely nailed the entire world of the movies. The way that Indiana Jones behaves, and up close, the face is obviously 80s Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford, one of my absolute favorite actors. I absolutely love him. He is my 80s. If you grew up in the 80s, you grew up on Harrison Ford movies. Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner. He was in everything that I loved from the 80s. I could go on and on about just him, but how they managed to get every one of his mannerisms down, which I'm sure are probably just mannerisms that Harrison Ford do, but the way he'll smirk a little bit, the finger wag, which is always something that Ford does in all his movies. So that's not an indie thing. That's just a Ford thing. Watch any Harrison Ford movie, he's probably going to finger wag somebody. But holy cannoli, I just could not get enough of this game. I'm still playing it. You get this map for every area, and then you can discover more mysteries, and then the map opens up and shows you where things are. So I would just walk around on the map, looking at the map with icons on the screen, and just, all right, I'll come over here and I'll take a picture, climb over here under this thing and get an artifact. And I wanted to keep doing it just because I wanted to be in the world. It's so incredible with how well they managed to show an Indiana Jones movie on screen. The design of the world and everything about everyone, like the humor, the weird, the kind of the lighthearted humor that the movies have is in the game as well. And then there's the cutscenes. The cutscenes are phenomenal. Like, I've never looked forward to watching a cutscene in my life. It's like I'm watching an Indiana Jones movie, like a 4 to 5 hour long Indiana Jones movie. As someone who grew up in the 80s, loves the movie, loves Harrison Ford, it's a treat. It's something that I wasn't even really thinking about. A cutscene happens, I'll put my controller down and just cross my arms and just watch it. Sometimes my mouth will actually drop open with how stinking good the acting is. Like, the guy who plays the antagonist, Emmerich Voss, is amazing. I actually think he might even be better than Troy. Troy Baker does play Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones. And I wasn't disappointed by that choice, but I'm just like, Troy does everything. If you know gaming and animated shows, you know Troy Baker. He does, I swear to F, 50% of all voice acting on everything. I don't know how the guy does it. Maybe he's a clone, but it's just like he's in everything. Troy has always been good. He's like the most dependable, reliable voice actor ever, really. People were saying if you didn't know it was Troy Baker, you'd think it was Harrison sometimes, but other times he sounds exactly like Troy Baker. But other times he sounds exactly like Harrison Ford. I don't know what it is about the yelling that he's somehow able to get the voice right. When he's just casually talking, a lot of times it really literally just sounds like Troy. I don't know, maybe it's because I know what his real voice sounds like and I'm trying to hear it, but I can hear a little bit of his cadence in the way he just talks normally. But I'm also the kind of nerd that looks for that kind of stuff. But the cutscenes were incredible, and I would just lay back, put my controller down. Even for the smaller side missions, there's already an edit on YouTube of the entire scenes, of every single cutscene edited together. And I'm legitimately looking forward to watching that after I finish the game. What more could you ask for? Story-wise, it feels a lot like Last Crusade, a little bit of Raiders. And it's an original story, sure, but it is the same structure-wise of the movies, of him getting pieces of information. some repercussions happens for him to just leave, because apparently it's like midterms. It does show the character of like, you know what, I don't even care, I'm gonna go find this. What it was about what was stolen wasn't like why he wanted it back so badly wasn't too clear, or it's just the fact that he's just that curious. Well, they stole it and I want to know why. That's literally all he kept saying. Yeah, I want to know why this gigantic dude came in and stole my thing and now he's gone. But I still don't know if that was enough to put your job at risk. The one thing that from the trailers that may or not be obvious is that it's a very stealth heavy game. I was not actually prepared for how stealth heavy it was, but I didn't mind it at all. Stealth is a big part of Indiana Jones. Like, he doesn't run into a room and blow everybody away with machine guns. And I love how you don't actually really have your own weapon other than a handgun occasionally, but you can pick up anything off the ground, a pipe or a shovel. I picked up and threw a fly swatter at a guy and got an achievement. If you haven't done the fly swatter throw achievement yet, do it. The combat, I really love the combat, like the up close first person melee combat. I'm sure a lot of people aren't a fan of first-person melee combat, but I love it. And in this game, it's like the best first-person melee combat I've ever experienced. Like, you're really in there. You can see the face of the Nazi that you're beating up. Because, yeah, the bad guys are Nazis, so it's very satisfying to be taking all their asses out. When you're fighting them hand-to-hand, you can see their faces and their reactions. And then you can block and you can parry. And then, of course, as you play, you get better. You can pick up these books that help you upgrade your skills. I really dig that kind of combat, and there's not enough games that do that. I mean, if I had to sit and think about how many times Indiana Jones actually took out his gun in the movies, I would only just think of that one iconic scene in Raiders where he took out a gun and shot a dude, because that day on the set, he was too sick to do all the shit he had to do. So he just said, hey, what if I just shoot him? And that's the only time I can actually remember in my head that Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, took out his gun in the movies. I could be wrong, but he's not a person who uses guns. He isn't a wild man. He doesn't run around and run into a room and blow everybody away. The AI and the enemies is pretty tight with how easily they can see you. All right, how did that guy just see me? I'm behind a wall. Movement and being quiet and staying crouched is important. Even the tiniest little sound, they will pick up on it. You can also, throw things over into a corner to distract them, and then sometimes I'll avoid them. I'm sticking with the stealth. Sometimes actually picking up a gun and having to use it kind of feels like a disappointment. Like, I don't want to use the gun because it's going to attract other guys. But then sometimes you're in a room and you're full and you're surrounded and you got to start shooting. But even the gunplay is great, but I almost don't want to do it. I'm trying to avoid it. But there's times where you just feel like you can't avoid it and you're going to have to just blow these dudes away. You only pick up weapons other than a handgun, and you have a finite amount. Every gun has a certain amount, like the shotguns only have 20. It's got to make them count. But of course, because it's machine games and they're already masters of first-person shooters with the Wolfenstein games. Like I said, this is not a video game review channel, but I wanted to review this game just because of how amazing it was. Definitely my game of the year. This is actually one of the few games this year that I played on release. And only because of Game Pass, because Game Pass is a godsend, but I don't always have Game Pass too. Like, I don't always have it. But there's some months where I just don't have it. I'm like, I don't really need it. I have a huge backlog. I can just play those games. But damn, it's so good, I just want to own it.
And, what do you think now?
And then we have our companion, Gina, who is an awesome companion and a lot just like the other women from the movies, like Marion and Willie. I forget her name, but they kept calling her Willie for short, I think. Their constant banter is light and funny, and eventually grow attracted to each other. We figured they were going to do it, but it's pretty on the nose with the guy and the girl who don't really like each other at first, and then eventually It does have all the tropes from the Indiana Jones movies, so why not have that in it? Gina is Italian, and she keeps calling him Strombo. I had to look up what that meant. Something to do with strange. Is she making fun of him? He can speak different languages, so he probably knows what she's saying. Banter, two people that are growing attracted to each other and comfortable with their presence. Sometimes I'll get stuck. She'll make a suggestion. Is that a lever over there? Or what if this thing? And I like how they give very subtle hints. Another thing I love is how simplistic the UI is when you're in first person. You just have a tiny little icon in the left corner and it's small, but it shows you everything you need to see. Hand-to-hand fisticuffs, like it's actually really visceral and you can feel it. Where I actually duck a little bit because they feel so hard and everything is so tactile. It's the best way I can use of how they designed everything to make it feel as real as possible on a controller. Playing this game with a keyboard and mouse, you're going to lose the tactile of this because there's parts in this game where it almost feels unnecessary and annoying at first, but you'll have a key and then you'll pick it up and then you'll find a door where it works and then it'll have you pick the key out, then you put the key in, and then you actually turn the door with the controller, and it is aggravating. I actually kind of love it now because that's the world. It's super tactile. It isn't just you automatically press the button and it does everything. The map you have is actually a map. You use a map constantly, and it's an actual map in his hand, and it's got journals and photos, and everything is real, and you're not in some magical menu. But I love the real tactile feel of everything and how it's actual map, and you know, everything is just real. It's interesting they decided to add that little tiny nuance to it, and it was irritating at first, but now that I like it because it adds to the overall effect. Like I said, it makes me wonder what it's like for people on keyboard and mouse. You're gonna miss out that little piece of game tech there. When I can skip a cutscene in most games, I'll do it. But in this one, I want to watch this. They aren't skippable, so if you do have to go through a cutscene again, I couldn't skip through it, that was irritating. I've seen it once, I don't really need to watch it again. Generally, every game that has a cutscene in, you can either skip it immediately or after the first time you watch it, you can skip it. But in this game, I couldn't skip, and I thought that was unusual. I don't know why I did that. Maybe I just missed the option and it's there. In this case, I don't mind as much because the cutscenes are incredible, and it's just a movie, intentionally slow. So all those things I said about pressing X, pressing a key, kind of adding to the tension, especially when you're surrounded by enemies or you're trying to be stealthy. They intentionally make it slow for you to pick them up, so then you get worried someone's going to see you while you're doing it, so then you pick them up, put them somewhere else. I know a lot of people were saying that the climbing is so slow and annoying, but you can also upgrade that. But even when you upgrade it, it's still pretty slow. But again, that does add to the tension of you're climbing up this thing as fast as possible. There could be a bad person just around the corner ready to shoot you, and it can get frustrating when you're someone like me who's massively ADD, wants to rush through everything. Not being able to skip the cutscenes was a little annoying, and the slowness of everything, but I got that it was intentional for it to be that slow when you're opening doors or climbing things, and it adds to the overall tension. Of course, you can't talk about Indiana Jones without talking about the music, and yes, the iconic John Williams score is played a lot, and it's just like in the movies. They'll play it during the big scenes, but yes, the music and how it plays just like it would in the movie during an action sequence. It'll be the big braggadocious kind of style, but then there'll be way more subtle little notes here and there, like just a little tiny flourish they'll play it in the background. How the music gets lighter a little bit during a lighter scene, like when they're just talking, when they're bantering with him and Gina, the tone of the music changes, but then it'll change again, just as it would on a movie, the way music changes on screen. But I also like that in the parts of the game where you can just kind of wander and there's no music really at all, which I like. You can hear Indiana Jones breathing. When you just stop still and don't move and you're in a quiet area, you can hear him breathing. And if you start running, you can hear him breathing faster. And it has all those little grunts and groans. Even when he kneels down and kneels back up, you'll hear the little grunt, which as someone who's old, I do the exact same stinking thing and I hate it because I can't even control it anymore. Anytime I stand up from a chair, I do a little annoying grunt and it's so irritating. If you're in your late 40s, you probably know what I'm talking about. The game is obviously very influenced by the Naughty Dog Uncharted games, which in turn is influenced by Indiana Jones. So it's influenced by its influence. The tiny little back and forth they have when they're just walking around is great. I don't remember playing many games that did that. You're walking around with your companion and they're just talking the whole time, which is kind of amazing when it first started becoming a thing. The puzzles are generally pretty simple. I'll occasionally get stuck, and I usually look things up only because I don't want to get stuck forever. I want to keep playing the game. But in this game, like, I would actually try to figure it out.
They got us!
My expectations were at like a 7 in terms of what it would be, but I'm like, yep, this is an 8. Oh no, this is a 9. No, this is a 10. Basically flawless. I don't really have any complaints other than the fact that it was released in December, which is a terrible month to release games in. They missed the cutoff for the Game Awards. This could probably have won Game of the Year. Like, there really hasn't been one hugely notable game since the PS5 and Series X came out in 2020. Kind of sad how, with hardly any notable releases, for me, this is definitely the best release of this generation. Whenever it decides to be over It's about time, but it just took way too long to get here. This game should have came out like 3 years ago, but it's fucking phenomenal. One of the best games I've played in a long time, and I can't wait to get back to it after this. So you know what you gotta do, my friends. Don't forget, like and subscribe, and to always keep gaming.
Thanks for that